Welcome to the Deep Dive. Tonight we're inviting you to step into the shadows with us. We'll be recounting some truly chilling stories from individuals whose lives were just irrevocably altered by the dark obsession of former partners. And these aren't tales from fiction. They're harrowing accounts of real fear, relentless pursuit. They really demand to be heard.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, or maybe deeply disturbing is probably the better word, it's not just the physical danger, which is obviously terrifying. It's the complete erosion of safety, of peace that these individuals endured. It's this psychological dismantling.
Absolutely. It's profound. So our first story tonight comes from a young man. We're calling him Mark. He's recounting his experience with a woman named Grace. They actually met back in high school. And even before they started dating, Mark noticed some behaviors that, looking back, huge red flags. Like Grace would stare at him for hours while they were both at work, just watching him. It was this attentiveness, he thought at first, but it quickly felt like something else, something more sinister.
And it's so easy, isn't it, to dismiss those early things. You think, oh, she's just really into him, or it's intense love.
Right.
But where do you draw that line? What are those key early signs that maybe something more concerning is actually brewing?
That's the critical question.
Yeah, because catching it early is, well, it's vital. What Mark described, that constant intense staring, that can absolutely be an early indicator of obsessive attachment, not genuine affection. When someone's focus is just so singular, so persistent that it feels like it's infringing on your personal space, or when their interest feels more like surveillance. That's when it moves beyond attentiveness. It crosses into territory that can really start to erode your feeling of safety. And often you see this thing called love bombing at the start, this overwhelming affection that then quickly morphs into controlling behaviors. It's like they're testing boundaries.
And for Mark, that line, it was crossed really fast. A few months into the relationship, things just devolved. It became suffocatingly toxic. He felt like he had no time for anything. Hobbies, friends, even just time for himself. Gone. Grace needed to know where he was, what he was doing, like 24/7. And missing a call wasn't just, oh, you missed my call. It was like up to 25 missed calls.
Wow, 25.
Yeah, followed by just a flood of texts. And he would often blow up into a fight over the smallest things, like him literally just going to the bathroom. His friends basically disappeared. So understandably, Mark decided he had to end it. But Grace, she wasn't letting go. She'd wait for him after work, physically blocking his car, trying to reason with him. Then one night she kind of lured him into her car, said they needed to talk. She even used this petty lawsuit she was threatening him with as a scare tactic to force the conversation.
Was using leverage, yeah.
Right. And when he finally firmly told her, I'm done, her father called her phone. And Grace used it as this chilling threat. She said, if you don't sit here and talk to me, I'll have him sue you right now. Mark just snapped. He'd had enough. He tried to get out, but the car door, it was locked.
Oh, boy.
As he's fumbling with the lock, Grace just grabs his arm, digs her nails right into his skin. He said he'd only ever known verbal abuse from her, never physical. And the look in her eyes, he described it as pure malice. It really unnerved him. Even though he's a tall guy, he was just shocked. He finally managed to wrench the door open, but she clung on to him, actually tearing his skin. So in this desperate move, he pulled her towards him, like onto the passenger seat, just to create enough space for him to break free. He got into his own car and just drove home faster than he ever had before.
That escalation from the emotional manipulation, the control, to sudden physical assault, and then throwing in a legal threat, it's terrifyingly swift.
It really is.
And it tells us a lot about typical escalation patterns in these kinds of cases. When that initial control tactic fails, like Mark trying to end things, the perpetrator perceives a loss of control. And that frustration, that sense of entitlement, it can fuel this really aggressive shift. It's not just an emotional outburst, It's often a calculated attempt to reassert dominance, to maintain that connection by basically any means necessary, and involving her father as a threat. That adds another layer of intimidation. It aims to isolate the victim even more. That progression, verbal, physical, legal coercion, it's a really critical and dangerous turning point, often signals a much more severe risk.
And the danger, it didn't stop when he got home, because Grace was practically his neighbor. So that same night, he's home, playing video games, trying to decompress, I guess. He hears car noises outside. Then, distinct taps on his window. Then another tap, and he hears Grace's voice calling his name. He just panicked. Hoped she'd leave if he ignored her, but no, she didn't. After a minute or two, she starts banging on the window. Her tone completely changes from soft to aggressive. She's yelling, "You can't do this to me, you're an asshole." So, against his better judgment, he opens the door, just a crack, asks her what she wants. She claims she wants her sweater back. He yells back, you can't be at my window at 2 a.m. for a sweater. I'll call the cops. And that's when she just blew up, screaming, sobbing uncontrollably. And then his heart just dropped. He sees, to the left of her, peeking out from behind a big tree, a hooded figure.
Oh, no. An accomplice.
Exactly. Grace sees him, notices this person. And as she reaches for his arm again, the hooded figure starts splinting towards his window. It was pure fight or flight. Mark slams his window shut right on Grace's arm. She screams, pulls back, and he locks it just as the other person reaches the glass. He holds up his phone, showing them he's dialing 911. And they just hurried back to her car and sped off. The police came, they took his story, but, without much evidence beyond his account and the scratches on his arm.
Right. Hard proof is missing.
Yeah, they couldn't really do much immediately. Mark still wonders what they intended. Were they going to jump him, rob him?
What?
Or something worse?
And this attempted home invasion, especially with an accomplice, it clearly shows intent beyond just, wanting to talk or get back together. But it highlights that critical challenge in the legal system. Proving stalking legally often requires establishing what's called a course of conduct. It needs a pattern of repeated actions that cause fear or harassment, and you have to demonstrate intent. A single incident, even one as terrifying as this sounds, might just be classed as assault or trespass, especially if the police can't immediately establish that history or that ongoing pattern causing fear. That lack of direct, undeniable evidence, clear video, other witnesses, it leaves this really difficult gap for law enforcement. So victims get caught in this awful limbo. They feel totally unprotected by a system that needs a higher bar of proof, which tragically can allow the perpetrator to keep escalating until something truly undeniable happens.
It's a terrifying reality. Our next story is from Amy. She broke up with her boyfriend, Tommy. Initially, their relationship wasn't super intense. They dated less than a year. And at first, Tommy was, sweet. Attentive, always texting, calling, and it felt like love. But that sweetness, it slowly morphed into something, extremely possessive.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. He'd get upset if she took too long to reply. He started asking really weird questions, like who she smiled at, or if any guys looked at her. Then he started showing up at her job unannounced, just standing outside the window, or appearing at bars when she was out with her friends, basically forcing her to come home. Her friends, as you can imagine, started to really despise him.
So Amy saw his attention as sweet initially, but it became suffocating. This overly attentive dynamic, it seems to keep coming up.
Yeah.
How do we differentiate between genuine affection and that kind of controlling behavior that often precedes stalking? What's happening psychologically when a partner starts crossing boundaries like that?
Yeah, what is that?
Well, the difference really lies in the intent and the impact. Genuine affection respects boundaries, right? Controlling behavior seeks to erase them. Tommy's actions questioning who she smiled at, forcing her to leave her friends. These are textbook examples of coercive control. It's a pattern of behavior designed specifically to make someone dependent, by isolating them from support, exploiting resources, regulating their everyday life. Psychologically, it's really about establishing absolute dominance. It often starts small, intrusive questions, then moves to surveillance, then escalates to direct interference in the victim's life. It just slowly erodes their autonomy, their self-worth.
And for Amy, the final straw, the moment she knew she had to end it, was when Tommy suggested putting a literal tracker on her phone. For safety, he said.
Oh.
Yeah. She ended it right then and there. He cried at first, then just went silent. Amy hung up the phone with this strange tightness in her chest, like a bad feeling, a premonition that it wasn't really over. And for a little while, things were quiet. She blocked his number, started going to the gym, cooking again, just trying to feel normal. But then about a week later, these mysterious messages started coming in. Random, unsaved numbers, short, vague sentences. She just blocked each one. Then it moved beyond texts. One night, she heard a soft noise downstairs in her apartment. Another night, maybe 2 a.m., she swore she heard a door inside her apartment open. She texted her family group chat, terrified, but they were all asleep. The really unsettling moment, though, came when she got home after visiting her sister. She walked in and immediately felt something was off. Nothing was missing, but all her apartment doors, bedroom, bathroom, they were fully open at weird angles. And the hallway closet door, which she always kept closed, was slightly ajar. She just knew something was wrong.
That creeping dread, violating the sense of home.
Exactly. So that night, she pushes a chair under her bedroom doorknob. She sleeps with a knife under her pillow, bedside lamp on. She must have dozed off because she woke up suddenly to a soft shuffle. The lamp was off. The room was dark. She looks towards the door. It's wide open, despite the chair she'd wedged there. Then she saw it. Just this black mass at the foot of her bed. As her eyes adjusted, she realized it was the top half of someone's head.
Oh my God.
Then 2 hands started caressing her feet. She screamed, just screamed until her lungs were empty, and she instantly recognized Tommy's voice telling her to calm down. When she kept screaming, he got on top of her, put his hand over her mouth. He kept saying he wasn't there to hurt her, just to talk. He wouldn't let go until she agreed to be quiet. Terrified, she just nodded. Her first question was, "How did you get in?" And he calmly confessed he'd made a copy of her key for emergencies while they were still together.
The ultimate betrayal of trust.
She just sat there, debating whether to grab the knife under her pillow, but she was too scared to make a move. He kept repeating, "I'm not here to hurt you, I just want to talk." But it felt like he was there to scare her into getting back with him. So in her terror, she just said yes, agreed to get back with him just so he would leave.
That violation, right into her bedroom, most private space. It's utterly chilling. How does that kind of invasive behavior breaching the sanctuary of home impact a victim, especially when the perpetrator tries to minimize it, saying they're not there to hurt them?
Yeah, what does it do?
Well, it's a classic example of what we call intimate partner stalking. The former partner uses their prior access, their intimate knowledge to violate privacy. The home, which should be the safest place, becomes the ultimate source of terror. This betrayal of trust, combined with invading the most private space, it creates something known as betrayal trauma. Victims can experience symptoms very similar to complex PTSD, profound sleep disturbances, constant hypervigilance, a deep-seated fear of intimacy, of safety, even in future relationships. And that claim, "I'm not here to hurt you," it's pure manipulation. It's designed to gaslight the victim, make them question their own fear, when the very act of breaking in is an act of aggression and control. It's a psychological assault with lasting scars.
He finally left after what felt like half an hour. The second he was gone, Amy called the police, made an official report, later got a restraining order against Tommy. Detectives were actually able to trace those fake numbers back to his cell phone. But she had to move. She went to stay with her parents, just traumatized by waking up to him there, by having had to even consider using a knife against him.
And the fact he had a copied key for emergencies. It speaks volumes about his mindset, doesn't it? How often do we see this kind of intimate knowledge, routines, habits, keys, weaponized in stalking cases? And how does that prior connection amplify the victim's vulnerability?
It must make it so much worse.
It does, far too often. When a perpetrator has that intimate knowledge, it transforms that information into a potent weapon. It means the victim has fewer blind spots to hide in, fewer unknowns that might potentially deter the stalker. This intimate weaponization is particularly insidious because it preys directly on the trust that was once the foundation of the relationship. It amplifies vulnerability exponentially. It turns what was once shared between them into a tool for terror. This type of stalking, often called ex-intimate partner stalking, is statistically one of the most common and, frankly, most dangerous forms, precisely because of that pre-existing knowledge and access.
It's terrifying. Okay, our final narrative tonight comes from a man who endured this relentless shadow from his ex-partner, Marissa. He dated her for about 1.5 years, described her as one of the most intense people he'd ever met. Passionate, charismatic. She really drew you into her world. Early on, she'd surprise him with gifts, leave little notes with poems, text goodnight every single night without fail. But that intensity, it had a really dark side. He said she didn't do calm. Everything was either absolutely perfect or a complete catastrophe. If he was like 5 minutes late responding to a text, it would trigger this stream of messages, worried, then angry, then suddenly apologetic. She accused him of cheating over an Instagram, like from some girl he hadn't even spoken to since high school.
Wow, extreme reactions.
Totally. And if something made him uncomfortable, she'd just shut down completely, sit silently for hours, just staring at the wall, until he basically appeased her. She started showing up at his office unannounced. Once, she was crying out in the parking lot because he hadn't answered her call immediately. He said he kept making excuses for her, attributed it to trauma, abandonment issues. He thought if he just proved he wouldn't leave, she'd eventually calm down. But instead, the more he gave, the more she seemed to need.
Yeah, that inability to do calm, the emotional manipulation tactics, those were clear early warning signs. Is this sort of all-or-nothing emotional roller coaster a common trait in individuals who later engage in stalking? And how does that cycle, that intense need followed by dramatic shutdowns, wear down a victim over time?
It must be exhausting.
It is. That all-or-nothing emotional pattern is often a really significant red flag. It points towards emotional dysregulation, a profound lack of secure attachment. The individual experiences relationships only in extremes, and this behavior creates a cycle of constant crisis for the victim. They're forced into this role of appeaser or caretaker. That chronic stress, it's a form of coercive control in itself. It exhausts the victim's emotional resources, erodes their confidence, and makes it increasingly harder for them to assert their own boundaries or even consider leaving. It's a calculated strategy, even if subconscious sometimes, to maintain absolute control.
He finally hit his limit, told her it was over. And she didn't yell, didn't cry, she just stared at him in silence. And she nodded and delivered this absolutely chilling statement. "You think it's over for you, but it's not over for me." He said the cold, factual tone of that threat just sent shivers down his spine.
Pure threat.
That same night, he blocked her everywhere, changed his number, even asked his building manager if he could move to a different apartment unit. For a few weeks, he thought maybe it worked. And then the letters started appearing. No stamps, no return addresses, just his name. Slipped under his door. The first one was almost nostalgic. "I miss waking up to you." The second one, much stranger. "You always check the door 3 times before you go to bed. You probably don't even notice it, but I do."
Chillingly specific.
Right. The third one was the one that made him pack his suitcase immediately. "You wore your blue hoodie Monday, the one with the hole in the sleeve. You should sew that up before it gets worse." He'd worn that specific hoodie, picking up groceries clear across town in the pouring rain. He hadn't seen anyone he recognized. But she had seen him. He knew right then moving across the city wasn't going to be enough.
That statement, "It's not over for me," delivered so coldly, it's a direct psychological threat. What's the intent behind something like that? And how do those increasingly specific details in the letters just completely erode a victim's sense of security?
It feels like psychological warfare.
It absolutely is. That statement is designed to instill this profound sense of helplessness, of dread. It strips the victim of their agency over their own life. It explicitly communicates that ending the relationship is his decision, maybe, but not hers, that she will maintain control. And the letters, with those hyper-specific, observed details, that's a deliberate tactic to showcase omniscience. It's not just, "I'm watching you." It's saying, "I know the intimate details of your life, even the tiny ones you don't realize are visible." This is incredibly effective at destroying a victim's sense of privacy, their safety. It makes them constantly question where, when, how they're being observed. They're essentially living under invisible surveillance. It fosters intense paranoia, feels like gaslighting, makes them doubt their own reality.
So he finds a job in Denver, moves, takes extreme measures, new email, gets a P.O. box, but under a false name, tells almost no one, goes completely dark online. Months go by. He's actually sleeping soundly again, even starts dating someone new. Then, one Saturday, he opens his P.O. box. There's another envelope, just his name. Inside, a Polaroid photo of him, walking near his apartment building, taken from behind. On the back, written in red ink, "Your shoulders slouch when you're tired."
Unbelievable. Across state.
He didn't even hesitate. Moved again, faster this time. New rental, new job, fully remote this time. Deleted almost everything online. He even got a large rescue dog, a German Shepherd mix, for protection. He went completely gray, as he put it, for almost a year. No letters, no pictures. He actually let himself believe maybe, finally, she was gone. Until the yellow Post-it note stuck to his front door. Red ink again. "I don't like the beard." He'd grown it out about 3 months prior. Only his dog and people on his work webcam had seen it. He shaved it off that night. The next morning, another note on his car windshield.
The persistence is just staggering. Tracking him across states, finding a P.O. box under a fake name, knowing about the beard. When law enforcement often needs direct threats or proof she was actually there, how do victims even navigate that systemic gap? What good is a restraining order against someone this determined?
It feels impossible.
It illustrates the immense challenge victims face and, yeah, the system's limitations. Restraining orders are crucial, but let's be honest, they're paper barriers. For a stalker like Marissa, who's using these indirect, psychologically sophisticated tactics, a restraining order might just escalate her determination or make her shift her methods to be even more covert. Law enforcement's hands are often tied by the legal definition of a threat, which usually requires explicit, direct intent to harm. Without that, or without undeniable proof of her physical presence at an incident, these cases become incredibly difficult to prosecute. It forces victims into this exhausting, expensive, emotionally draining cycle, constantly moving, changing identities, living in perpetual fear. They effectively sacrifice their own lives just to evade the stalker. It really highlights a critical need for legal frameworks that recognize the cumulative psychological harm of sustained, non-physical harassment.
He contacted the police again, but same story. Without direct threats, property damage, they couldn't help. A restraining order. Needed proof she was there, which felt impossible without catching her in the act. He changed all his habits again, paid attention to every tiny detail, but sleep. Sleep just evaded him. Then, after about 2 weeks of silence, he started to wonder, maybe she was gone. Then one night, he woke up with this horrible feeling like someone had just been watching him sleep. The next morning, taped to his front door, a photo of them together from when they dated, but her eyes in the photo had been gouged out, like someone used a needle to stretch them into these deep gouges.
Yeah, that's deeply disturbing. Symbolic violence.
He moved again. Not just across town this time. He found an isolated cabin, 3 hours up in the mountains, used a fake name, burner phone, took every precaution imaginable, worked remotely. His only visitor was an occasional Uber Eats driver. And for a whole month, it actually worked. It was quiet. Until he heard footsteps, crunching snow outside his isolated cabin. His dog went absolutely ballistic. The next morning, he went outside. Shoe marks, leading from window to window, around the cabin. No notes this time. Nothing. Just the tracks. He packed his bags that same day. Drove straight back to his hometown.
That gouged photo, the footsteps at the completely isolated cabin. These are, as you said, symbolic acts of violence. Even without physical contact, they are incredibly effective at instilling pure terror. What message is being sent through actions like that? And how does this constant, relentless cat and mouse game affect a victim's mental state long term?
It must break you down.
Absolutely. These are profoundly disturbing acts. The gouged eyes. It communicates a desire to blind the victim, symbolically, to remove their ability to see, to escape, maybe distort their reality. And the footsteps at the remote cabin, leaving no note, that's almost more terrifying. It confirms that there is no safe haven. No amount of precaution will truly hide him. For the stalker, it's a game, a twisted pursuit of power and control. But for the victim, this constant chase leads to a chronic state of hypervigilance, a complete breakdown of trust, and often severe symptoms of complex PTSD. Their world shrinks. Their sense of self gets eroded. They're forced to live in this perpetual state of fight or flight, even when there's no immediate physical threat. The psychological toll is just immense, long-lasting. It forces fundamental changes to their identity, their lifestyle.
Today, he lives back in his hometown, but he lives with 3 roommates. All ex-military. He says their intimidating presence, the pickup trucks, the Purple Heart plates, the giant flags, serves as a powerful deterrent. He believes Marissa is, quote, a mentally unstable stalker, a danger to herself and anyone she gets involved with. His solution, living with these roommates, it really highlights the extreme lengths victims have to go to just to feel safe, often completely outside official channels.
And what systemic changes or maybe societal shifts might better support victims like him? How could we intervene more effectively before things spiral this far out of control, forcing victims to basically become their own security forces?
Yeah, what needs to change?
Well, his situation perfectly illustrates a major gap in our support systems. We really need to move beyond viewing stalking as just a series of isolated incidents. We have to recognize it for what it is, a pattern of coercive control and psychological terrorism. Systemic changes have to include broader legal definitions of stalking, ones that encompass psychological harm and these indirect threats. We also need enhanced training for law enforcement so they can better recognize early warning signs and patterns. And societally, we need much greater public awareness about these behaviors, empowering people to identify red flags in relationships and understand that intense doesn't always equal love. Early intervention for individuals showing obsessive or controlling behaviors is also critical, focusing on psychological support, not just waiting for punitive measures after the damage is already done.
These stories, they aren't just cautionary tales, are they? They're really urgent insights into the profound psychological scars left when obsession just shatters personal boundaries. The dark truth seems to be how quickly something that might even start as intense affection can twist into something truly terrifying, fundamentally altering lives, eroding every last sense of safety.
Yeah, this deep dive really reveals that, especially in our interconnected world where personal info is so accessible, that line between intimacy and intrusion can become dangerously blurred. It really compels us to ask, how do we fortify our own psychological boundaries, our digital ones too? How do we learn to recognize those subtle signs of encroaching obsession? And maybe most importantly, how do we better empower and protect those who are being relentlessly pursued long before physical harm becomes the only threat the system really knows how to address?
We've journeyed into some really dark corners today, trying to extract some crucial insights from these harrowing realities. If this deep dive resonated with you, if you found these narratives as gripping and unsettling as we did, then please consider supporting our channel, Horror Docs. Like this video, share it if you feel comfortable, and subscribe to Horror Docs for more true tales that haunt the imagination. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and please, stay safe.